Thrive heavy lies the crown is an upcoming city builder / RTS hybrid that, surprise, you can try for yourself right now. As long as you're one of the people in the statistical majority who are watching this video on or before December the 18th, 2023. It's available on Steam and there's a link in the description. This is a true beta test for the early access release next year, and there are some issues, so please give your feedback to the devs if you're able. Lastly, this video is sponsored by Playside Publishing, Thrive's, well, publisher, as you could probably guess. And now that I've met the requirements of our deal by telling you that you can get the game now for free, let's go into what Thrive is, and why you might want to get it on your Steam wishlist for its 2024 release. Thrive takes place in the land of Nessamore. Thrive is a fantasy world, but there aren't magical elements or many things out of the ordinary. Imagine Stronghold, but with occasional purple crystals and fog. We'll talk about this a bit later on. The story setup for now is simple. You're the leader of your small enclave of travellers, heading to this new land, desperately trying to find a new, permanent home. It's your job to establish your town, grow your population, and figure out the intricacies of this new land, at the same time fending off rival factions, and trying to make friends with the local inhabitants, who have been here for a lot longer than you. The game has a single mode right now, which is this sandboxy-ish setup that features the first act of narrative elements that will be expanded later in Thrive's development. The twist here is that you can play this now in multiplayer with up to 4 players, which I really love to see. Unfortunately, due to New Zealand time being just completely out of whack, and me having to work on this video at bizarre hours just due to life stuff, I haven't been able to give multiplayer a try. I will certainly give it a shot once we're in early access, as a few friends of mine have been particularly interested in a cozy, city building adjacent RTS to chill out with together. And since Stronghold just refuses to add co-op of any sort, and Manor Lords is still a way out, Thrive seems like a great contender on that front. In the current demo, there aren't really any goals or end games. Each game takes a few hours as you progress through the events of Act 1, but you're able to continue messing around afterwards. Just don't expect any more story updates or new stuff to play with. So yeah, it's basically the first few hours of the game with all the key city building mechanics, and there is some limited combat as well as the trade systems and the like. I've played Thrive for around 6 hours, which included 4 separate games. One I took to completion, and a few that I cut and run from early as I learned new things and realised that I'd completely annihilated the core fundamentals of my town, which was making things, well, difficult to build upon. There's a helpful tutorial if you're new, which I made the most of, and it takes you through the basics and progresses through the demo at a steady pace. You start a game of Thrive by choosing your province. You can end up with multiple of these and swap between them at real time. Eventually, provinces will have unique benefits and drawbacks. However, as far as I can tell now, this isn't quite implemented yet, and each location is functionally the same. From there, you begin with a simple caravan. Your goal is to find a suitable place to settle and build up your town by attracting new settlers to your piece of prime real estate. You start simple, chopping trees, cutting stone, harvesting apples, that kind of thing. Yes, the 3 pillars of any medieval peasant's life. Later, their needs expand to more complex items that require resource chains to manufacture and produce, such as harvesting hemp to make clothing, or producing cider using apples and water. It's a somewhat standard city builder or stronghold style affair, but it works well, and there's a few great inclusions Thrive adds to make this feel unique. A building priority list is incredibly useful, allowing you to easily allocate peasants to jobs that you deem more appropriate if you lack the population to service them all, and you can even reduce the total number of employees at most sites if you need them elsewhere and don't mind the associated output loss that comes along with it. It also goes the stronghold route of giving all your peasants names and statuses, which is a nice touch. This loop of expanding your town, fulfilling your peasants' needs, and keeping the resources flowing is 95% of what's in this demo. However, there are glimpses of the future with lightly implemented mechanics that will be built out for later releases. Walgrim is one, the purple element I mentioned earlier. As this bar fills at the top of your screen, the Walgrim presence in the land builds, and once it reaches the end, there's a surge. A Walgrim surge can mean many things, sometimes good and sometimes not so good. It could embolden your peasants or cause your farm animals to all fall ill, among other things. It also tends to leave these crystals around, which, based on listening to some of the dev streams, can be quite volatile, though they can also act as a harvestable resource.
Some other items are crystals in your territory, so the Walgrim crystals are something that can spawn, and there's a lot to do with those. You'll need to collect them and house them in a secure location because they have a chance to explode. Maybe we can show that in a future video. But yeah, I do have 6 crystals here, so I'm getting a -6 in happiness right now.
There's also a trade system, which is frankly a bit obtuse right now, as is the research tree, which lacks a lot of its UI. There's also the entire benevolence system, a decision-making mechanic that affects your game as you lean towards being a benevolent or tyrannical ruler. Thrive markets itself on this quite heavily, so this will be a tentpole feature at some point. It's good to see the beginnings of all these mechanics, and I look forward to seeing them developed for later releases. I think Thrive will end up being quite complex once it's done, so it'll be up to the devs to ensure that it's not too intimidating for the average player. Because when I started, I definitely was thankful that the tutorial was there to guide me through it, as I was a little overwhelmed when I began. As I mentioned earlier, this is a true beta, which, yes, you are meant to have fun with, but should still be considered a kind of playtest. Because of this, there are some issues with what is available right now. Thankfully, as far as I can see, it's nothing significant. The most irritating were decently long save and load times. Not a big deal, but I did find I was sitting around quite a while when I wanted to save a game or load it. It took 30 seconds to a minute or so. There's also quite a few UI elements that are missing, or just using work in progress assets, which isn't really a big deal, but sometimes when you're mousing over stuff and just seeing it say default, it gets a bit annoying because you're trying to tell what this thing is, and you have to look really closely to match the image to the one in the build menu. I will say that to the devs' credit, in the first build I got for Thrive, there was a pretty nasty issue where save games were just being deleted when you tried to load them. And they actually delayed the required dates on this video to fix those to their own marketing detriment. So props to them, you like to see it. Lastly, I'm not going to talk a lot here on the graphics, as I imagine these will develop quite significantly as the game grows. There is some pretty noticeable object and texture pop in as you look far away, and I do wonder if this is why the camera can't be rotated to look really far away manually as of yet. You just have to zoom in or out. And performance is, yeah, it's just okay for a game of this graphical quality. There were some more issues before that patch they dropped, but now it works pretty well. For the most part though, the game does look quite nice. I like the art style they've gone with, and there are times where the game does look really, really incredible. Like sunrises are a really good example. These look really, really good. But for the future, I would like to see nighttime improved, particularly the transition between nighttime and day, and some alternate weather options would be nice too, like rain or clouds, big storms, stuff like that. Overall, it is a great start though, and it certainly looks to be ticking the cozy boxes that me and my friends are hopefully going to find here. Thrive is certainly early in its life, but I can't say I didn't have fun in the 6 hours or so that I've spent playing it this week. I think offering a demo for free for beta testing before a full release is a great idea, and honestly I would really love it if they continued to have a demo available once it becomes a paid product. It would show a really strong confidence in the game that they're creating, and, I can see why. There is a lot of potential with Thrive here, especially for me as a multiplayer cozy city builder. something that I wish games like Stronghold offered as part of their whole package. Once again, you can check out Thrive using the link in the description, and if you give it a try, do let me know what you think in the comments. I would love to hear your thoughts. If you do like the game, please do add it to your wish list, as it does help smaller devs like this massively. And of course, like I said earlier, if you do have feedback, you can let them know through the game itself. I'm sure they'd very much appreciate it. And thanks so much for watching, and big ups to my supporters on Patreon and YouTube memberships. That's Takayo, Wintendo, Bad Ghosts, Sean, Grey Spirit 4, George Netters, John Kaiser, King Thickums, Pavel, Bram, Christian, Dan 4, Bishop's Arch, Orion, Das Roofkin, Emma Paladins, Johnny, Marika, Age of Cause, Joe Tank, and of course Empyrean. Thanks very much everyone, and we'll see you next time.